The dragon court was built to make mortals tremble. It stretched wider than cities, carved from black stone and dragon bone, lit by rivers of fire running through the floor. Every sound echoed, every heartbeat seemed too loud. On the golden throne sat Emperor Kael'drath, the oldest living dragon in the world. His eyes burning like molten gold, his scales darker than night itself. Around him stood 1,000 courtiers, half-dragon nobles and armored soldiers, waiting for the next trial to begin. But when the great doors opened, no warrior or knight entered. Instead, a small figure stepped through the smoke, a human girl, wrapped in a simple cloak, dust clinging to her boots. She walked with calm steps, her face half hidden beneath her hood. The hall went silent. Then laughter broke out, harsh and mocking. "A human?" someone shouted. "A child?" another sneered. Even Kael'drath's lip curved slightly. "What does this frail creature seek in my hall?" he rumbled. His voice shook the marble. The girl raised her head. Her eyes, bright and steady, met his. "I come to return something that was stolen," she said softly. Yet her words carried through the air like a blade. Kael'drath leaned forward. "Stolen? From me?" She nodded and held up a scroll wrapped in silver cloth. "This belonged to your ancestors. It was never meant to be hidden. It tells the truth of your throne." Gasps filled the chamber. The emperor laughed. A deep, echoing laugh that rolled like thunder. "A truth? From a human? You dare bring lies into my hall?" Arya did not flinch. "It's not a lie," she said quietly. "It's a forgery, right? That's what you'll say. But I think you already know it's not." The court murmured. Her courage unsettled them. No one had ever spoken to the emperor like that. Kael'drath waved a clawed hand. "Bring it here," he commanded. The guards hesitated before stepping forward. The girl handed them the scroll, her fingers trembling slightly, but not from fear, from power, from purpose. When the emperor took the scroll, he felt something beneath the cloth. A warmth that was not fire, but life itself. He frowned. The silver seal bore an ancient mark, a circle of flame surrounding a human hand and a dragon's claw. The sight struck something deep in his memory, a flash of an oath sworn long ago. The crowd leaned closer as the emperor broke the seal. The parchment inside shimmered faintly, glowing with a light older than his empire. Strange letters twisted on the surface like living fire. "What trick is this?" he growled, but his voice was quieter now. He read a line aloud, and for a heartbeat, the flames in the room dimmed, bowing to the scroll's light. The courtiers stepped back in fear. The emperor's hands tightened around the parchment. "Where did you get this?" Arya met his gaze. "From the ruins of the first temple," she said. "The one you burned." Kael'drath's heart thudded once, heavy as stone. He remembered that war, a war dragons never spoke of. A war where humans had stood beside them, and then disappeared. "You're lying," he said, but his words sounded hollow even to himself. Arya took a slow breath. "You can call it a forgery if it helps you sleep. But you should know this." She lifted her left hand, and as the torchlight struck her skin, a faint golden mark appeared on her wrist. A dragon sigil, the same one glowing faintly on the emperor's own scales. Every soul in the court froze. The emperor rose from his throne, his shadow stretching long across the floor. "What are you?" he whispered. Arya's eyes softened. "Someone you were meant to remember." For the first time in centuries, the great dragon emperor felt his knees weaken. He could smell ancient fire on her. He could feel a heartbeat that matched his own. Then anger returned, fierce and sharp, covering fear. "Guards! Seize her!" The soldiers hesitated. None wanted to touch the girl with the mark. But Kael'drath's roar shook the pillars, and they moved forward. As they reached for her, the mark on Arya's wrist flared with blinding light. The soldiers screamed, stepping back as invisible heat seared through the air. Arya didn't move. She simply looked up at the emperor and said, "You can't chain what was born from the same flame." Kael'drath's eyes blazed. For the first time in his reign, he did not know what to say. He only knew one thing: This girl carried something dangerous, something that could end him. The flames around the court flickered, bowing toward her. Somewhere deep beneath the palace, ancient magic stirred, the kind that had not awakened in 1,000 years. Arya turned, her cloak sweeping across the black marble as she walked out, leaving silence in her wake. Behind her, the Dragon Emperor stood motionless, his claws trembling as he stared at the glowing scroll still burning faintly in his hand. The laughter that had once filled the court had vanished, replaced by the sound of a single truth whispered through every trembling heart. The girl was not lying. The palace burned with whispers long after the girl left. Servants spoke in secret corners, afraid even to breathe too loudly. No one had ever seen the emperor hesitate, not even for a breath. But that day, in front of everyone, he had frozen. Emperor Kael'drath sat alone in his chamber high above the city. The night was quiet except for the low hum of dragonfire from the volcanoes surrounding his capital. He stared at the ancient scroll on his table, the same one the human girl had brought. It still glowed faintly, as if alive. He had tried to destroy it earlier. He'd burned it, cut it, and even drowned it in molten gold. Each time, the scroll repaired itself, the words shimmering like sunlight through smoke. He leaned closer, reading one line again and again. When the flame breaks its chains, the blood will remember. His claws clenched. What blood? What chains? For the first time in 1,000 years, the great emperor could not understand the words of magic written before him. The symbols looked familiar, ancient dragon script. Yet beneath it he saw another language, one that humans used before their fall. He growled softly. How could she have known this? The air shifted. From the shadows emerged a tall, silver-robed figure, the Silver Seer, oldest of the court's advisors. His eyes shone like mercury. You called my emperor? Kael'drath's voice was rough. You saw her, didn't you? The human girl. The seer nodded. I did, my lord. I felt her power even from across the hall. It burned brighter than yours. The emperor's jaw tightened. Impossible. No human carries dragonfire. The seer hesitated, then whispered, unless she is not fully human. The room seemed to darken at those words. What do you mean? The seer stepped closer to the scroll, studying the faint golden glow. There was once a woman centuries ago who bore the mark of the flame, the same mark on the girl's wrist. She led the humans during the first pact. Her blood mingled with dragonfire when she sacrificed herself to seal the rift between our worlds. Kael'drath's eyes narrowed. That was myth. Not myth, Emperor, the seer said softly. History. You were there. A tremor went through the Emperor's hand. He looked away, his breath heavy. He had buried those memories so deep he thought they were gone. The sight of cities burning, of humans and dragons side by side, and of one woman who stood between both races with eyes full of light. He had called her ally, then enemy, then lost. Kael'drath turned back to the window, staring at the burning horizon. She died. I saw her die. The seer's tone was careful. Then perhaps her blood did not. Silence filled the chamber. The Emperor felt something strange stirring in his chest. A mixture of rage and fear. If she truly carries that blood, he said, then I cannot let her live. The seer bowed his head. If you kill her, the fire will rise again. You cannot destroy what you share blood with, my emperor. The flame in her heart is the same that burns in yours. Kael'drath turned sharply. You dare say I share blood with a human? The seer met his gaze calmly. You share destiny, my lord, and destiny does not ask for permission. Before the emperor could answer, the chamber doors burst open. A soldier stumbled in, gasping for air. My lord, the girl, she's gone. What? Kael'drath's voice thundered across the room. The dungeon, the guards, they're alive, but asleep. No wounds. The scroll is missing. The girl vanished without a trace. Kael'drath's claws dug into the stone wall. His fire flared so bright that the banners caught flame. Find her, he roared. Find her before she unleashes what she does not understand. The soldier fled, leaving the emperor standing in the smoke. For a long time, Kael'drath said nothing. He looked again at the table, at the empty space where the scroll had been. The air still shimmered faintly with golden dust, as if it had chosen to leave rather than be taken. He turned to the seer. If she carries the blood of flame, what will she seek? The seer's voice was almost a whisper. The temple of fire, the place where dragons were born, and where the first pact was broken. Kael'drath's wings twitched. The memory of that place haunted his sleep. It was where everything had begun, and where everything could end. He looked out over the sleeping city, the red glow of volcanoes painting his face in light. For the first time in centuries, the Dragon Emperor felt unsure of himself. He had ruled galaxies of flame, crushed armies with a single roar, yet now a single human girl made him feel small. He whispered to himself, almost without knowing, "Who are you?" Far away, beneath the stars, Arya walked alone through the ashes of the old world, the scroll hidden in her cloak. She could still hear his voice echoing in her mind, not as an enemy's threat, but as something older, something aching with guilt. The wind carried her answer softly into the night. Someone you should have never forgotten. The Dragon Empire did not sleep that night. From the mountain peaks to the burning valleys, the Emperor's command echoed through the skies. Find the human girl. Bring me the scroll. Thousands of wings darkened the moon. Dragon soldiers soared across deserts and oceans, their shadows crawling over sleeping towns. Villages trembled as they passed overhead, their eyes catching glimpses of golden fire in the clouds. Yet the one they hunted was already far beyond their reach. Arya moved swiftly through the ruins of the old lands, the wind tugging at her cloak. The night air was sharp and dry, carrying the smell of ashes and stone. Behind her, mountains glowed faintly from the dragonfires that watched from afar. She didn't stop. The scroll pulsed faintly in her bag, alive, guiding her through the wastelands. Every few steps, she felt it whisper in her mind, not in words, but in memories. A temple of red glass, a circle of dragons bowing to a woman wreathed in golden light. A voice saying, "Guard the flame, even from those who claim to be its masters." She touched her wrist where the mark glowed faintly beneath her skin. It burned whenever she thought of the Emperor. Somewhere deep inside, she could still feel his presence, not as an enemy's hatred, but as a pull. Something ancient connected them, something she did not yet understand. By dawn, she reached the edge of a canyon that glowed faintly with crystals. At the bottom, half buried in dust, lay a stone obelisk marked with dragon runes. As she knelt beside it, a shadow moved behind her. "Lost human?" The voice was calm, rough, and not entirely unfriendly. She spun around, hand on her dagger. A man stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, his eyes faintly golden in the light. When he smiled, she saw sharp, pointed teeth. She froze. "You're a dragon." "Half," he said with a shrug. "Terran, I saw you being hunted by the Emperor's flyers. You're lucky they fear sunlight." Arya didn't lower her guard. "Why would you help me?" He looked past her at the glowing scroll peeking from her cloak. "Because you're carrying something that shouldn't exist. And because I've seen you before, in my dreams." Her eyes narrowed. "Dreams?" He nodded slowly. "A woman with fire in her eyes and a mark like yours. She stood beside dragons and spoke their true names. I thought it was just a story until I saw you." Arya felt her heartbeat quicken. "You said true names. What does that mean?" Terran's voice dropped lower. "Every dragon has a true name, the sound of their flame. It gives them power, but it also binds them. Only the one who knows it can command them. But the knowledge was lost centuries ago." Arya opened the scroll carefully. The letters shimmered, rearranging into glowing lines of dragon language. The air around them trembled. Terran stepped back as light touched his skin, scales flickering faintly beneath. He whispered, "It's the language of origin." Arya traced one line with her finger. "I think it's more than that. It's remembering me." Before she could read more, the sky split with thunder. A massive shadow swept across the canyon, dragon soldiers, "Run!" Terran shouted, grabbing her hand. They dove behind a fallen arch as fire rained down from above. The ground shook, rocks exploding into shards. Arya clutched the scroll, whispering the first line she could remember. The strange glowing words she had seen earlier in the Emperor's hall. The world froze. The flames halted midair, hanging like molten drops. The dragons above screamed, their wings locking in confusion. The sound was like metal breaking. Then the fire turned, upward, vanishing into light. Arya stared, trembling. The scroll glowed brighter, the letters spinning faster. Terran looked at her in awe. "You just spoke their true name." She shook her head, frightened. "I didn't mean to." He stepped closer. "Then you'd better learn to control it before they find you again." Above them, the Emperor stood in his obsidian tower, his claws tightening around the edge of his throne. Every dragon across his empire had felt it. A sudden stillness in their fire, a strange voice commanding their flame to rest. His soldiers reported that their wings refused to move, their breath vanished. Kael'drath rose slowly, rage and fear twisting his face. "Only one voice could command dragons," he whispered. "And she's using it." He turned toward the Silver Seer. "Summon the Legion. She's heading for the Temple of Fire." The seer bowed, but his eyes were distant. "Be careful, my lord. If she remembers everything, not even you will stand in her way." Far below, as the sun set, Arya and Terran climbed out of the canyon, the scroll glowing between them. Arya looked toward the east where the horizon burned red. "The Temple of Fire," she said softly. "It's calling me." Terran smiled faintly. "Then we'd better hurry, before the Emperor arrives first." And somewhere, hidden beneath the earth, something ancient began to stir, the first flicker of an old flame remembering its name. The great dragon palace was silent. Even the fire in its halls burned lower, as if afraid to breathe. Emperor Kael'drath stood alone before the great window of his tower, watching the storm roll across the crimson sky. The glow of dragonfire flickered over his scales, but his eyes were far away, lost in time. The reports had come in from across the empire. Entire legions of dragons had frozen mid-flight when the girl spoke that single command. Not killed, not hurt, just silenced, bound by a voice that should not exist. He had felt it too. For a heartbeat, his wings had refused to move. His own fire had gone cold. No one in the empire knew how that was possible. But Kael'drath did. He had seen it before, centuries ago when the world was young, and dragons had fought beside humans, not above them. He had seen that same light, that same power, in another pair of human eyes. The Silver Seer entered quietly, carrying an ancient crystal orb glowing faintly blue. "My lord," he said, his voice careful, "you have not rested since the hunt began." Kael'drath didn't turn. "Rest is for those who forget their sins." The seer lowered his head. "You remember her, don't you?" Kael'drath's claws scraped against the stone. "I remember everything." He closed his eyes. The tower around him faded. The air grew hotter, thicker. He was back there again, in the old world. He saw the golden plains of the First Age, when dragons ruled the skies but shared the earth with humans. They were allies then, bound by a sacred pact, a promise that both races would guard the flame of creation together. And he remembered her. A human woman with hair the color of firelight and eyes that could silence kings. She had led the humans with courage and mercy. Her name had burned itself into his soul, Arya Solaris. He had stood beside her once on the steps of the Temple of Fire, both of them swearing to protect the flame that gave life to dragons. He had trusted her. He had loved her. But love had turned to fear. When the flame began to whisper to her, ancient power waking in her blood, the dragons had grown afraid. The elders had warned him, "If she learns its true name, she will command us all." Kael'drath had gone to her that night, asking her to give up the scroll that carried the flame's words. She refused. She said the flame belonged to all life, not to dragons, not to humans. He had begged her. Then, when fear overpowered reason, he betrayed her. He led the first firestorm that destroyed the temple. He thought she had died in the flames, the same flames that gave birth to his empire. The memory tore through him like claws through flesh. He saw her eyes one last time, not angry but sad as she whispered, "You will burn for this, Kael'drath, until you remember the truth." His breath shuddered. The vision faded, and the seer was still there, watching him. Kael'drath's voice cracked. She was supposed to be gone forever. The seer's tone was soft but sure. "The flame does not die, my emperor. It is reborn. Perhaps it has chosen to return through her, through the girl you call your enemy." Kael'drath turned sharply, his golden eyes blazing. "She carries the blood of the one I destroyed. How can she forgive that?" The seer shook his head. "Perhaps forgiveness is not what she brings. Perhaps she brings the reckoning you were promised." Thunder rolled outside. Lightning cracked across the sky, and for a moment, the Emperor's reflection in the window looked younger, the same dragon who once swore an oath beside a human queen. He walked to his throne, his claws leaving scorch marks across the floor. "If the past is returning," he said slowly, "then so is my debt. I will face her at the temple." The seer bowed. "Then the old flame will burn again." Kael'drath looked out into the storm. In the distance, the red moon was rising, the same omen that had appeared on the night Arya Solaris fell. The same moon that marked betrayal. He whispered, almost to himself, "I swore I'd protect her fire. Instead, I stole it." For the first time in centuries, a single tear of molten gold rolled down his scaled cheek, hissing as it touched the floor. Far away, across the desert, the new Arya, reborn and unaware of her past, climbed the last ridge before the Temple of Fire. The horizon shimmered with heat, and she felt her mark burning. Terran walked beside her, his wings hidden beneath his cloak. "You're sure about this?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "I don't know why, but it feels like I've been here before." As they stepped closer, the ancient gates of the temple creaked open, not from her touch, but as if welcoming her home. The Temple of Fire rose from the desert like a memory of gods, its black stone walls scarred by ages, its gates glowing faintly red, pulsing like a heartbeat. Sandstorms curled around its base, but the air near it was still, heavy, waiting. Arya stopped at the foot of the great stairs, her chest tight. The mark on her wrist burned brighter with each step she took. Behind her, Terran scanned the horizon, his wings hidden but trembling beneath his cloak. "Something's wrong," he muttered. "The air smells like lightning and ash." Arya nodded. She could feel it too, a hum under her skin, a deep call that didn't come from outside but from within. The temple was alive, and it knew her. She took a slow breath and began climbing. With each step, whispers filled her ears, soft, ancient voices speaking in a language she didn't understand. When she reached the top, the great doors swung open on their own, releasing a wave of heat so strong it nearly pushed her back. The temple's interior was vast and circular, built from obsidian stone that glowed with veins of magma. In the center burned a single pillar of flame, tall, golden, and soundless. It didn't crackle or move like normal fire. It breathed, like a living creature. Terran stayed at the edge, unease clear in his eyes. "That's the flame of creation," he whispered. "The heart of the old world." Arya stepped closer. The fire seemed to lean toward her, flickering with a strange warmth. Not dangerous, not wild, but familiar. Then she heard a voice, not from around her, from inside her mind. "You have come home," she gasped, clutching her head. Images flashed. A golden plain, a burning sky, a man with dragon eyes shouting her name. A scream, a betrayal. Her knees hit the floor as the memories flooded back. The Emperor's face, the firestorm, the betrayal, her own death. She remembered everything. Terran ran to her, gripping her shoulders. "Arya, what's happening?" Her eyes glowed bright gold as she whispered, "He was the one. Kael'drath destroyed me." Far away, thunder split the sky. On the horizon, a shape emerged, vast, dark, winged. The clouds tore apart around it as Emperor Kael'drath descended. his wings stretching across the storm like shadows of gods. Every dragon in the sky fell silent. Even the lightning dimmed. He landed before the temple, the ground cracking under his weight. His soldiers waited behind him, heads bowed, afraid to breathe. Kael'drath looked at the temple's blazing entrance and felt his heart tighten. He could feel her presence inside, her soul reborn, burning again in the girl he had sworn to destroy. The seer stepped forward beside him. "She remembers now," he said quietly. "The flame has awakened." Kael'drath's claws clenched. "Then my sins are no longer secrets." He started walking toward the gates. Each step echoed like thunder. When he spoke, his voice rolled across the desert. "Aria Solaris." Inside, Aria's head snapped up. That voice, that deep, resonant voice, tore through the air like the sound of the storm that once ended her world. She rose slowly, her hands glowing with golden light. "You remember me," she said, her tone steady but trembling. Kael'drath's massive form entered the temple. The moment he crossed the threshold, the flames flared higher, lighting his scales in shades of gold and crimson. He looked at her, this human girl carrying the eyes of the woman he once betrayed. "Yes," he said, "I remember everything." Silence filled the temple. Then the flame itself roared to life, sending waves of heat that shook the ground. Arya took a step forward. "You destroyed the world we built. You killed me, because you were afraid of what I could do." Kael'drath's wings opened wide, their edges brushing the burning air. "I was afraid of losing control," he said quietly. "And in doing so, I lost everything." She lifted her hand, and golden fire circled her like a storm. "Then this ends tonight." Kael'drath lowered his head, his voice low and sad. "Yes, it does." The next instant, fire erupted, hers gold, his red, colliding in a blinding explosion of light that shook the temple walls. Terran was thrown back, shielding his eyes as ancient symbols blazed across the stone floor. The two forces of creation clashed, human and dragon, light and flame, their roars echoing across the desert. Outside, dragons screamed as the sky split open. Storms raged across the horizon. Every creature felt the weight of something older than war, a reckoning. Inside the fire, Arya saw flashes, of him laughing beside her long ago, of the promise they made, of the night he burned it all. And despite her rage, a part of her still saw the sorrow in his eyes. He wasn't just her enemy. He was her mistake and her mirror. Their powers flared one last time, colliding in a beam that reached the heavens. The temple trembled. Cracks spread across the ancient stones. Then, just as suddenly, the light went out. Silence. Only smoke remained, curling around the place where both had stood. Terran rushed forward, calling her name. But as the smoke cleared, he froze. In the center of the chamber stood a single figure, surrounded by flickering flames. Neither dragon nor human, but something in between. Eyes of gold, wings of light, and a voice that spoke softly, both hers and his as one. "The war is over, but the fire has only begun." The desert was silent. The temple of fire no longer glowed. Its walls, once alive with red veins, now stood dark, cracked, smoking, broken. The storm above had vanished. Only a thin beam of light shone through the clouds, falling on the ruins like a final blessing. Terran stumbled through the ash, calling out, "Arya, Emperor." His voice echoed across the empty halls, but there was no answer, only the whisper of cooling stone. He stopped in the center of the great chamber, where moments ago the two flames had collided. The ground was scorched black, melted smooth by their power, and in the middle stood a single figure, still, quiet, surrounded by faint golden fire. First, Terran couldn't move. The figure looked human, but not completely. The wings were not of flesh or scale but of light, shimmering gold and red, blending together like dawn and dusk. The air around them pulsed softly, alive. "Arya," Terran whispered. The figure turned. Their eyes glowed with both the dragon's fire and the human's warmth. When she spoke, Her voice carried two tones, one soft, one deep. "I am Arya Solaris," she said slowly. "And I am Kael'drath, the Flamebound." Terran froze. His mind couldn't understand what he was seeing or hearing. Somehow the fire hadn't destroyed them. It had merged them. What happened?" he asked. The being stepped forward, the ground glowing under her feet. "The flame chose balance," she said. "It took the sorrow of dragons and the mercy of humans, and joined them. We are both. We are one." She lifted her hand, and the broken temple walls began to rise, stones glowing, sliding back into place as if time itself was reversing. The flame in the center reignited, burning brighter than before. Not gold, not red, but a new color, pure white, shining like the heart of a star. Terran dropped to one knee, unable to stand under the power radiating from her. "What will you do now?" he asked softly. Her expression turned distant. "There are still those who follow fear. Dragons who believe humans must kneel. Humans who believe dragons must burn. The fire inside me remembers their pain, and it will end it." She looked at the sky through the ruined ceiling, where sunlight now streamed through the dust. "The world burned once because of pride. I will not let it burn again." Far away, across the empire, dragons stirred in their sleep. They felt a pull deep in their hearts, a warmth, a memory. The fire inside them responded, calming, glowing softly instead of raging. The storms that had shaken the sky began to fade. The old seer, standing miles away in his tower, gasped as the horizon lit with white fire. Tears rolled down his wrinkled face. "The prophecy," he whispered. "The flame has forgiven itself." Back in the temple, Terran stood slowly, his eyes wide. You're changing everything," he said. Arya smiled, the same smile she had centuries ago when she first stood beside Kael'drath. "Change is what the flame was meant for." She walked past him, the heat of her presence soft instead of harsh. When she reached the steps of the temple, the golden sand swirled upward, forming patterns, ancient runes glowing before fading again. Terran followed, awe and sadness mixing in his eyes. "Will you stay?" She paused, looking over her shoulder. "No, the flame must move. It cannot stay in one place or one body." As she raised her arms, light enveloped her completely. Her wings expanded, filling the sky with gold and crimson light. The sand turned to glass beneath her feet. In that moment, the air carried her final words, a whisper that seemed to reach every living creature. "From fear I was born. From mercy I rise. Let the fire guide you, not destroy you." Then, in a burst of brilliance, she was gone, dissolving into countless sparks that drifted upward like stars returning home. For a long time there was silence. Then, one by one, dragons across the empire lifted their heads to the heavens and bowed. Terran stood alone before the temple, now whole again, its gates sealed. He felt warmth on his face, and when he looked up, the sun was breaking through the clouds, painting the desert in colors of fire and peace. He whispered to the wind, "Goodbye, Arya and Kael'drath. The world will remember you." And somewhere in that endless blue sky, two voices, one human, one dragon, echoed softly, carried by the wind. "We never wanted worship, only understanding." The last of the white fire faded into the horizon. The age of dragons had ended. The age of flame had begun, an age where humans and dragons would share the same light. And in that light, hope returned.